At Elevate One Consulting, we specialize in executive, business, and accountability coaching tailored just for you. Discover the power of enhanced leadership skills, improve performance, and increase self-awareness. Our expert coaches will help you navigate challenges, articulate your vision, and establish a work-life balance. With Elevate One Consulting, you get proven methodologies to drive growth and success, insightful feedback and personalized strategies, clear goals, and actionable plans. Whether you're a C-suite executive, business owner, or entrepreneur, our coaching programs are designed to help you thrive. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com and take your first steps towards a focused future. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Imagine a place where the untold stories of Black missionaries are amplified, honored, and celebrated. A place that bridges the legacy of the people of the way with the powerful missions work of today's African diaspora. Welcome to the Black Missions Museum, a digital project dedicated to preserving the voices, culture, and legacy of Black missionaries across the globe. But we need your help to bring this vision to life. Your support makes a difference. Join us in this mission by donating today. Just click the link in the show notes to give and be a part of history. Together, we can inspire future generations and keep the legacy alive. Welcome back to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddie Paul Thomas, and this week we bring to you a topic that is a fairly tough one to tackle. We are discussing building bridges in a post-election world. And as we will learn the results of local and federal elections next week, I'm not sure there could be a better topic to face head-on. In many ways, this topic is one that is particularly tough because this election, well, quite frankly, it just feels different. The stakes seem much higher for so many people. So what we're discussing today is how to move forward after the elections have been decided. My guest today is Dr. Tiffany Thompson. Dr. Thompson is the author of books, It's a Job, Not Work, and Mindfulness in Me. She is also a counselor, creative coach, and a therapist with 25 years of experience in expressive therapies, mental health, and school counseling. Her voice is, quite frankly, a very important one on this topic because she can speak to not only the adults in the room, but the children as well. So let's get started. Tiffany, I cannot thank you enough for joining us here on The Unbroken Place. And really, I don't know that this conversation that we're trying to tackle could come at a better time, and to have a voice like yours, who is, genuinely used to dealing with some very tough topics with your clients. I think it couldn't be at a better time.
Thank you. I'm so excited to share with you and have this time to just have some real conversations.
Yeah. Well, let's start right off, just in terms of your perspective on why empathy is essential in conversations across political divides, especially after elections.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's essential because empathy is something that helps bring people together when you have empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting yourself in someone else's shoes, particularly after the election. It can help harmonize the dialogue that's been had. Many times people are on these two different sides and things are being polarized and people aren't really listening. They're just wanting their own thing said. And if their potential person didn't win, then they may have some anger or some resentment,
Yeah.
things of that
Yeah.
nature. So really, when you approach people with empathy, we create an environment where people can feel heard and seen. So I think when we use the terms empathy, when it comes to like elections and things of that nature, it really is giving us a time to really just sit back and listen.
Yeah.
And listen to the other person. It makes each person feel humanized,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting, the attitudes and perspectives of people after the election versus before. Before, it is this side is awful because this side is awful because, and those experiences are very different when you're a minority in a country, or I mean any country. When you're dealing with a minority group, um, it's a very different conversation regardless.
Mhm.
But the difference before the election is very, very different than after. The decisions have been made, the votes have been counted. So how can individuals engage in open, empathetic conversations when faced with, those deeply differing political views after the votes have already been counted?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I think one of the things that people need to do is they need to be curious. Like I tell my students, you have to be
Mm-hmm.
curious to really lean in and learn about someone else. So that's how you help build that bridge. If you just step into the conversation being curious, just trying to see like their viewpoint and trying to
Mm-hmm.
understand what they were thinking, what they're thinking, and just trying to find a way to connect and maybe find some shared values within that conversation. So we all want great things for ourselves. We all want peace. We all want better money out here for ourselves, better buy food and groceries. We all want our school
Mm-hmm.
systems to teach our students, to educate them, so our kids grow up to be, independent, socially able to develop in a way that they're able to be independent thinkers and critical thinkers and create relationships with each other and really be able to be social beings, right? So if
Yeah.
those are all things that we can say, hey, we all agree on, we want these things, then me leaning in and being curious can kind of help bring that bridge together so that we can really foster a place that it's not about my political views, but more about my humanity and how we
Mm,
are connected as
yeah.
humans.
Yeah. It seems like there's much less of a machine behind it as well.
Yeah,
Where the humans can start to have conversations,
mhm,
as opposed to the talking points from this side or this
exactly.
side, that are pushing it. Like, you can't go anywhere, watch your favorite TV show without a commercial telling you, "Ooh, this person is a criminal. Ooh, this person is doing this awful thing," and you can't escape it, especially in the digital world now, where if you pick up your cell phone, it's just it's everywhere. So
Right.
it does, that void that is created by the machine being quieted down just a little bit, does create an opportunity, I think, for people to have um, more compassionate conversations, to be more curious. It's just very hard. When this launches, it'll be a week before voting day, and the intensity is crazy.
Right.
Um, the in Charlotte here, I'll say that the majority of people, even outside of North Carolina, see North Carolina as kind of a purple state where it can go either way. Very different than what you and I both grew up in Indiana. It was very clear where
Very
Indiana
clear.
stood on 80 to 90% of its topics. But you moved to California, I moved to North Carolina, both kind of blue purplish
Hmm.
states, where it's very clear who stands for what, but there's not. It doesn't feel like there's this overriding tension that can devastate some conversations. So looking at those states where whether you're in Indiana or Alabama or Florida, where it's very, very clear where they're going to go, how would you advise people to try and create those safe spaces in that type of category?
I think again, it goes back to the willingness to listen and the willingness to acknowledge someone else's feelings. Once we get past who we are and understand, our ego, it's what everything is about, really, is our ego. And you have to
Mm,
learn to be submissive and like submit that ego and pull it down so that it doesn't take over the conversation. And so as long as you can kind of like when you start to feel your ego rise up, you start to feel yourself like feeling challenged in your own morals, because sometimes this is a moral situation, right? Like sometimes it
yeah,
may be a whole different thing, which makes
yeah,
this election a little different, right? Because we're looking at
right.
morals more so than our issues. And I think when you start to look at the issues versus morality and what your morals are, then I think you have a better understanding. But until people can look and say, hey, your morals and your values are not the same as mine. I think that's what makes it harder, right? Because if someone's morals and values are dehumanizing, you talked about marginalized people. I like a term I just learned was I like strategically undervalue people, right?
Oh
Groups
yeah.
strategically undervalue.
Ooh,
Isn't that? Yeah, I just
I
heard that.
like that.
I like that. Yes.
That is
So
much
when
better.
you look at yes, when you look at those strategically undervalued groups,
Hmm.
and you have some groups who have maybe had a different experience, right? And they don't want to even listen or even try to see those other sides and understand that two things can be true at the same time. I think
Yeah.
you get more of these combative conversations, and you have people not willing to lean in because they come in with their ego and
Mm.
they're not willing to acknowledge the other person's lived experiences. And
Yeah.
so instead of looking at, again, our morals and our values, we got to look at the issues because,
Yeah.
my morals and values may be totally different than someone else. Like, one of the big things I know in this election is women's rights, right? Women's right to
Hmm.
choose their body. And as a
Yeah.
woman, I will always fight for a woman to be able to choose and do with their body as they
Yeah.
please. And as a person of faith, I also believe that God gives us free will. So when you're having these conversations with people
Hmm.
who are trying to like judge the morality of how someone's living and put them in a box because they don't agree with their lifestyle, they don't agree with their choices. To me, that's different than political issues. Political issues for me are more around, are my kids getting a good education?
Hmm.
Can people afford to buy homes?
Yeah.
I'm living in California. The things out here are ridiculous because the
Yeah.
market is so oversaturated. You have so many investors who have bought into properties and they've raised the prices, and so you have all these competing areas where the middleman, the lower man on the pole can't even find a decent living place because it's so expensive, and then the jobs aren't paying the money they need to be able to
Mm.
sustain the ability to pay for the home. So those are
Yeah.
issues that I'm concerned about. You know, homelessness, things that are happening at the border, like as far as like when people come over to this country, how are we supporting them? How are we helping them so they can be a productive member of this society? So all these things are important. And I think when you start talking about those issues versus the morality of like a woman, what she's doing with her body, or a person who may happen to choose an alternative lifestyle than I choose, I think then you
Hmm.
can have a real conversation. But until we're able to stop trying to put our morals on someone and like our belief systems in that place on another person, I think those conversations are harder to have. But it goes back to having empathy, right? And
Yeah.
still having the
Yeah.
willingness to listen. Even when those things are different, you still just have to listen.
Yeah. I think some of the coolest conversations, just kind of building off of what you were saying, um, when you work in religious spaces,
Hmm.
as I have for years, where you are, dealing with every sort of faction within, a religious group, and it doesn't matter if it's Christian or Islam or what have you. Um, One of the greatest diffusers I've ever developed was the ability to study outside of the Bible, to understand where people are coming from by looking into who they are and what their belief values are. And one of the things that I learned is that in the world, there are more than 40,000 denominations of Christians. Within the United States alone, there are more than 200 that believe a wide range of things. So when we're talking as people of faith about, well, the Bible says this, right? But I also read the exact same verse and I came to a different conclusion based on my upbringing, my lifestyle, all of these different things. Christian means something different to every single person who claims it. And so what I've told people is, you have to understand that when we're talking about what's going on in the world, you can't just throw the Bible at it and say, that's it, because 20 people are going to take 20 different viewpoints based on what they're reading. So let's talk about the humanity of the situation. Let's look at this person across from me and understand that what they're experiencing in life is going to be different than mine. If you come from money, you're going to have a different experience from somebody who didn't come from money. If you are a female, you're going to have a very different life experience than a male. all of those things go into this gumbo of how do we deal with politics, um, because it's, if you don't do this, you're a this, or if you don't do that, you're a this. And categorizing people after elections is one of the most detrimental things to conversations and building bridges that I've found people experience.
Well, I think, you said a lot of good points there when it looks like you talk about the different religions and how, you know, the world is set up. And I think a big
Mhm.
piece of that goes back to fear, right?
Yes.
It's hard to have
Yes.
empathy when you are fearful and you assume things and you have a lack of patience, right? You have to have
Mm.
patience as well because you have patience and you have to have
Yeah.
compassion. And people are often, afraid to be misunderstood.
Hmm.
So we all want to be heard and seen. And sometimes it makes us more vulnerable, but you have to be vulnerable in these spaces. You have to be okay with being vulnerable. Or you have to be okay with someone not agreeing with you
Yeah.
and being okay with saying, okay, well, that's how you think. And this is how I think without hating them, hating the person, right?
Yeah.
Hating the person who delivered the message. Yeah, when we're looking at morals and values and we're looking at those things, it makes it harder for us to really be vulnerable, right? And
Mm.
so
Yeah.
the more we
Yeah.
start to realize, like, okay, these are my morals, these are my values. And then we see someone else who doesn't have what we think as the same morals and values and integrity that we may have, it makes it harder. And I think that's the thing about this political climate that we're in right now, because many things are laying out um, a place where people are looking at people's morals and values and this integrity
Yeah.
piece, because those are the
Yeah.
things that have come up because of fear, right? And we know when we start digging into somebody's morals and values, we make them more fearful. Because if
Yeah.
I'm talking about something that you hold dearly to heart, like your religious values, your spiritual values, those things, if I'm talking about those things and telling you I'm going to take them away, or telling you that those things that you believe in don't even matter, right? Like I'm not even considering your standpoint, then
Hmm.
that makes me less likely to be vulnerable in that conversation to be able to come to the table to build a bridge.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems is how do we become vulnerable? How do we stop taking a defensive stance? Like, how do we not be defensive when we're having these
Yeah.
conversations and stop creating these walls, right? We create these walls of division and it makes it hard for us to connect with others. So, how do
Yeah.
we start to, like you said, build bridges so that we can connect to others? How do we start to see people as humans? How do we start to see people as being, multifaceted? So many
Yeah.
things can happen at once. I think that's one thing I'm noticing within the last couple of years, and even working with students, is that people are very linear thinking now. Like it's really hard for people to realize that several things can be happening at the same time and all be true based
Hmm.
on our lived experiences. And I think the more we start to help people understand that, the more people can become curious and the more people can step back and let go of their ego
Hmm.
and become a little more vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that, that's such a good point, because I know that, in working in several different spaces, that those who, research suggests that those who are really into social media, and again, for anyone listening here, I am not against social media in any way, shape, or form. I utilize it personally and in my business, practices. So it's not, Eddie bashing on social media, but the fact of the matter is that social media puts you into a category, and you start to receive, once you click a like or make a comment on something, you start to see that thing over and over and over and over again, and it starts to build on your worldview. And this is the only thing that you'll start to see. So it's, I take what you're saying very seriously, and I understand it. I just know that, one of those things that we're competing against when we're trying to introduce empathy, and we're trying to, um, show people that they need to have more compassion for others, is the fact that social media is that playground that can really derail progress in some ways. So I think what I'll do, Tiffany, is ask you specifically, because this is your, area of expertise. What are some practical strategies for holding space for others emotions, experiences without passing judgment. How do we do that?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a whole dissertation on like,
Mm-hmm.
the no judgment philosophy. So I'm really big into expressive therapies, the open studio process, which was created by Pat Allen, who actually is from Indiana. So it's really, and she's out here now. It's hilarious, right? The way life
Mm-hmm.
circles around. But really, the open studio process is a concept, right? It's about no judgment, and so in the open studio process, you use art as a way to help you move through the phases of life and things because we don't understand like the impact, like you were talking about social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a therapist and dealing in the world of psychology, there's a lot around art and our brains and pictures and images and how these schemas become
Oh,
embedded into our brains and our
yeah,
minds, right?
yeah.
So once these things start to get embedded in our minds and brains, it's harder to create those no judgment spaces because
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand the things we're taking in. So whether that's music, whether that's videos and pictures. That's why the expressive arts are so important because there's such a spiritual piece that people don't understand
Yeah.
and how they're really changing the format of our neurons and our brains and how they actually are wired. And like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
algorithms, once you start clicking something, then those algorithms come about and they're like, oh, he likes this. So I'm going to keep showing him, Eddie likes these types of conversations. So I'm going to keep showing him people who have the same viewpoints as Eddie, right? And that's
Right.
why it's important to like step away from the computer, and really have real life conversations with people, real human interconnections. Like I'm really big
Yeah.
into like spaces where people can come and have conversations. I do community circles at my school and have conversations like this with parents and teachers and educators. And they're not always easy, there's a lot of stepping in and really having to put yourself aside to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But really the first part is we have to really know who we are and where we stand and express that in a way that people feel comfortable, and we have to be
Yeah.
open to accept another person when they share with us. So really trying to create these no judgment spaces and spaces where people can come in and say, hey, look, this is a space where you can be truly free, truly who you are. We may not agree, I may not like half the things you say, but I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
respect you because you are human, because you
Yeah.
are a person, because you deserve respect no matter what. You deserve that peace. We all deserve to be respected.
Yeah.
Now, it gets challenging when people come in there, they're saying things that are just totally against me, right? When they start
Yeah.
talking about and devaluing a group of people, right? If I'm
Right.
devaluing someone because of their culture, their religion, their identity, any of those things, then that makes it harder to have a no judgment space because
Right.
the judgment comes up because it's a protector, right? Our judgment, we have to judge that. That's part of our lived experience. Like I walk in a room, I'm judging, I'm looking at things because I'm trying to see what's safe, what's not safe. Like
Yeah.
I'm just really,
Yeah.
so being able to judge things is important. We have to have that piece where we're assessing. So there's some assessments that need to go about, but we also have to be able to, after this election, be able to, have an approach where we're looking at our emotions and realize
Mm-hmm.
how high they are, right? And people's
Yeah.
emotions are going to be high, and
Yeah.
people may feel misunderstood, even when they're in their own circles. You could be
Yeah.
in your own circle and you're still assessing your friends. And
Mm-hmm.
you may think you know your friend, but you may not know your friend. I'm finding out, I'm sure you've seen this too over the last since 2020 on social media. Some
Yeah.
people we went to high school with, people you
Yeah.
went to grade school with, you spent the night with them, you broke bread with them, they were like family. Their mother was like your mother. And you're
Mm-hmm.
starting to see some of their viewpoints based on some of the posts they put out there. And it's like, ooh, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
then you're like, but I know this person. I
Mm-hmm.
know this person to be this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I spent the night at the house with them. We ate the same, we both loved Frosted Flakes, whatever, we love Snoopy. And now I'm seeing this person in a different light based on a post that they put. So
Yeah.
I am judging, right?
Yeah.
But I'm judging because I'm assessing, is this a safe person still?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of what they posted. They posted something that was totally against my whole cultural belief, who I am. Like it wasn't just like a comment or a just, I don't agree with something. It was more about something that innately affected me as a person of
Yeah.
color.
Yeah. It's See, there's this gentle dance that we're charged with when you're trying to be a bridge builder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, First of all, the bridge builders are those people who are actively trying to create safe spaces. Like they're creating it because there's a void, there's something that needs to go in there, and you're creating that safe space for conversations. And something I learned early on in 2016 through 2020 and everything else that happened after that was, when it comes to social media, that is not the safe space.
Mm.
Someone says something that you think is just absolutely abhorrent and you confront them. Now they have to defend themselves because all of their friends are on social media. And then you have complete strangers who you've never met coming in, talking about your value as a human being. And it's not a real space, is what I came to learn. Um, it's a space where it's almost where they get that liquid courage, except I call it digital courage, where
I like
you
that.
can say whatever you want and there's not
Yes.
really any repercussions unless you are a person who has power somewhere, where like you're the head of a company or the teacher somewhere or whatever it is. And so when I have those instances now, when I see someone post and it's someone I genuinely care about, I will message them and say, "Hey, can we have a coffee? Can we have a digital tea? We'll jump on Zoom or something and just have a conversation about where are you? What led to this? What do you know about this topic that you just posted? Are you thinking about it from all perspectives? Are you thinking about who is impacted when you share this thing and now it's been shared 20,000 times?"
Mm. Oh, no.
So the conversation is more out of care for them as a person that I care about than Joe Schmo who says, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dog. I don't. If you believe that, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for you. I can show you all the information, but data and proof doesn't really matter in those moments. It's more about the connection with the person who posted for me. So the other part that I would love to kind of pick your brain on is balancing this desire to build bridges with also standing up for yourself,
Mhm.
because there are genuine bullies out there. I'm not going to say any specific percentage, but there are bullies out there who pride themselves on belittling others and feeling like they've taken some sort of power and making people feel terrible. And they do it like, that's what they do. So I'm curious, for the bridge builders specifically out there, um, how do you coach them up on how to deal with the bullies, the genuine bullies, and those spaces that aren't always safe?
Ooh, that's deep. That's getting real deep
Mm.
there, Eddie. I want to kind of go back to like which I really love. Like I want to answer your question, but I really love the
Hmm.
fact that you reach out to the people and that
Yeah.
you inbox them. And I've done that some of that too. But the fact that you say let's have a coffee, let's have a conversation. What you did there is you've been a bridge builder, right? You're also
Hmm.
holding space. You're holding that safe space.
Yeah.
You're allowing people to let them know I'm here for you and I see you. And
Hmm.
I think that is what's so important because so many people want to be seen. And that's the bully too, right? The
Hmm.
bully wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and wants
Yeah.
to be recognized. And
Great point. Great point.
and from the as a therapist and psychologist, many bullies, they have low self-esteem. Like the people who shoot the loudest, sound the loudest, put all the stuff out there. There's trauma going on. There's a lot of insecurities going on. There's a lot of things underneath that are happening. And
Hmm.
those people have probably not done the work that they need to do to help them be able to step into those healthy healing spaces. So as the
Hmm.
bridge builder, that's our job. That's your job as the person who's holding these healing spaces to make even that person feel seen and heard, even in their nastiness.
Mm.
finding a way to make them feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And as you continue to put that small stick out there and giving them a way in,
Hmm.
many times that bully will either one start to do some inner work and thinking about, oh wow, maybe I shouldn't. Or they may decide like, hey, I'm not even gonna fool with these people. I'm not even gonna come around.
Yeah.
They remove themselves, which is also unfortunate because you really don't ever get a chance to really interact, engage with them. However, but for your own sake and for your own sanity and for your own peace of mind, sometimes you have to let them go because
Yeah.
you can't, we can't sit there and be beat up on. You can't let yourself keep getting beat up on because that's trauma, more trauma. Then next thing you know, you got PTSD, you're tripping, and then you start picking up the same characteristics as the person that you don't like or that
Yeah.
you don't like how they treated you. So I think the biggest thing is about making sure that you are we're being clear, and that we're
Hmm.
being clear with what we're saying and what and who we're bringing to these circles and what the
Yeah.
expectations are when we bring these circles. Because a lot of times when I create these healing circles, there's rules, right? There's rules that are put up. You have to have rules. Like that's just life. We need rules. We need structures. We as
Yeah.
humans desire structure. We desire rules. That's why a lot of people, people are like, well, how do people want a dictator? Because a lot of people want to be led, and some people don't want to do the thinking, and they
Mm.
want somebody to tell them how to do it. Like, you know, that's how the work environment is set up, right? You have your leaders, you have your management team, and then you have your workers, right? Some
Hmm.
people just want to be workers, and that's fine. I think it's great. We need workers, right? Some people
Hmm.
want to manage. They like to manage the workers. They like to like be in the mix, but also kind of lead and guide. And then there's people who are the visionaries that hold the top level, who actually see the big picture and put the plan together. And those big picture planners are usually the ones who are able to hold that space because they have to be the ones who can be those bridge builders for all
Yeah.
these people that are
Yeah.
working beneath them. So really, I think it just goes back to having clarity, building trust across those individuals, but putting some powerful lines in place, right? Putting some
Yeah.
powerful lines there
Yeah.
that because elections they draw they've already drawn these lines. They've already drawn these lines, and then we have to figure out how do we start to bring clarity and
Hmm.
rebuild. Because that's the next person, whoever it is who becomes president. That's one thing they're gonna have to do. They're gonna have to find a way because we are so divided
Mm.
in this country.
Yeah.
And other countries are looking at us and they are also becoming divided because they see what we're doing. And we are the leaders. We really are the leaders of the world. And world leaders are looking at us and other people from other countries. I have friends, I've traveled all over the world. I have friends all over the world. And, friends in India, friends in Africa, friends in Israel, friends in Palestine, friends, all
Hmm.
over.
Yeah.
And I talk to them and they ask me like, what is going on, in America? Like, it just seems so toxic and so hard to live like that. I feel sorry for you guys.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I've heard that. I've yeah. Tiffany, you hit on so many points, and I'd love to just unpack all of them, but I know we only have so much time. We can't talk for 3 days. Um,
No, we
the
can't. It's
a
a different
couple.
topic.
We'll definitely do a part two. In fact, everybody, I'm holding Tiffany to this right now. We're going to do one of these post election,
Okay.
and kind of cover that. But one of the things that I learned, because I was a coach for a long time, high school and college, just dealing with a wide range of kids, and that's one of the things that I was able to learn very early on is that bullies aren't hardwired bullies.
Mhm.
There's a fear behind their activities. There's a I have not been heard behind their activity. There's something going on in their personal life that hasn't been addressed. And I'm nobody's therapist, but in working with these kids, when they do something in practice that's just highly detrimental to the team, pulling them aside instead of embarrassing them and making a big scene like I dealt with in my school days, where everybody's got to run laps now and all these. I would pull the kid aside and tell my assistant coaches, "Hey, just go ahead, keep going. I'm going to go talk to Tony or Sarah, whoever it is," and we'd sit and talk. And for the rest of the practice, I'd say, "No, no, 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 no. That's not your practice out there today. Your practice is here. Let's talk." and there was always something going on. Boyfriend broke up with them, or their girlfriend's cheating on them, or mom and dad are arguing. There's a divorce on the way, or with kids, it was easy to ask an open-ended question and just shut up and let them just, I'd say probably 80% of the time there were tears involved, where they were talking about something that's going on in their life. They're being bullied at school, whatever the thing was. But I was able to have those conversations as a coach because they trusted me. They knew I wasn't going to run out and tweet it or whatever whatever. But I see that with youth as something that can be done on a regular basis. That's an easy thing. It's a much harder thing for adults to get them to, put their defenses down, understand that I'm not, shaking you with one hand, coming with a fist punch with the other. I'm genuinely here to listen to you and try and understand why you believe in something that's causing so much harm to others. And I look at that, and one of the challenges, and this is where I'm leading to a question for you, is how would you suggest, because biases, you mentioned it earlier, and when I talk with adults, biases came up over and over again as a result of fear or some unmet need. But how would you suggest that we address our own personal biases? You, me, bridge builders, people who are on the fence of, what they want to do after the election. How would you suggest that we address our own biases to ensure we're genuinely opening ourselves up to understanding other people's perspectives?
It goes back to vulnerability. That whole story you shared was about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that is what is the big bridge, the one that brings the bridge. That's what actually brings the bridge together. That's what helps us be able to cross that bridge, is being vulnerable, because it's the authenticity of it, right? The authenticity of
Mm-hmm.
it, like being authentic. You're authentic, right? When you're being
Yeah.
authentic, when you're really being vulnerable and authentic and showing who you are and laying
Yeah.
yourself out there, it opens up the space to say, you're human, I'm being vulnerable to you, I'm sharing who I am, I'm giving you this. So the goal is that as someone sees you being vulnerable, then they can also step into that space. And that's what you did with that student, right? With that,
Yeah.
when you coach someone, you saw something was happening with this person who's being a bully or being mean or whatever, except like something's happening. Let me be vulnerable. Let me go step in and take time to listen and hear and just make a space for them to be vulnerable. But you have to first be vulnerable. We have to first step into that space. And it's hard. It's not easy because we all have our fears. But that's something you have to work on every day within
Yeah.
yourself. Like, how do I become more vulnerable every day? How
Right.
can I, because trust is hard, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're a little kid, you trust so easily, because your mom's gonna make the bottle for you, your dad's gonna pick you up and put you on his shoulder. But the problem is the trust piece has been broken, even at child rearing ages a lot of times. Some of these
Mm-hmm.
children that I'm calling children or adults, they're
Yeah.
children still,
Yeah.
because they didn't get that
Emotionally.
proper,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't get that proper child rearing. They didn't get that proper support or love. They didn't get to be able to be vulnerable as kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm just thankful I was able to be a vulnerable child. I came up in my family, my parents were really supportive in like my identity, who I am. They made me feel strong and confident. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay being vulnerable because I've had enough people who I've been able to lean into and trust that didn't hurt me intentionally, things of
Yeah.
that nature. But so many people have been hurt, whether intentionally or unintentionally, some way along the line. And that's what happens. And that's the beauty of working with kids and younger people, is because
Yeah.
you can start to be that person to help them to see that there are good people in the world. There are people who truly care about you, who are authentic, who are going to see you for who you are, who are going to help hold your pain for you. And that's what these people have. They have pain, right? And they have felt outside the box. And
Yeah.
that's why when you're doing like groups and when you're trying to bring different categories together, like, I'm big on affinity spaces, right? So a lot of people push against affinity spaces. They, oh, that's more divisive. Why are you doing that? No, because the problem is it's all about belonging. I
Yeah.
will continue to say that. Like I look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? You got the bottom place where, you just need food, shelter, just to be able to survive. Then you
Yeah.
start to move into these other areas where you need the space of belonging. And then once you feel like you can belong, you can start to help build your own self-esteem. And then once your self-esteem is built, then you can walk out here and you can actually self-actualize and take on the world. Well, so many people are stuck at the first two stages. Either it's the place where they need food and shelter and they need those general things taken care of, or they're in that place of belonging where they never felt as though they belong because they never felt like they belonged to themselves. Because
Mm.
somewhere along the line, someone violated them, which
Yeah.
caused them to violate themselves, which caused them to no longer trust their own intuition, their own spirit, their own heart. And so they're seeking outside of themselves for those things that they need to go inside. That's why, as a sound healer, sound therapist, I do a lot of that work with people so they can really help to heal that inner child and help
Mhm.
to really go in and just really sit with who you are, the good, the bad, the evil, the nasty, all those things, move
Yeah.
through it. And as you move through it, then you can step out and then you can start to find those spaces where you belong and create spaces for others who don't feel that they have a space. And then once you can do that, then you can rouse up your self-esteem. And then once you feel self-confident, you don't bully. You're really trying to get to that next level so you can self-actualize. But so many people are stuck just at the base two. So I really, really am a big fan of like the whole Maslow hierarchy of needs because I do feel that there's so much value in those stages. And
Yeah.
when we get stuck at any of those stages, that's when we start to see these things that happen. So being
Yeah.
vulnerable for me is the space that you have to be in to
Mm.
start to move.
I love that. The there's so much to unpack in that one too. I'm glad we're doing a second one, Tiffany. um, I have a really practical question for you because when we're talking about politics, what's shoved down our throats day after day after day after day is what's going to be ripped away from you if
Yes.
this other person wins. Okay. Um, it's very clear in every message this person is going to destroy your life if you let them win. So with that on the minds and hearts of every person who's voting here and those intense discussions where people are disagreeing over a political ideology or fact or whatever they've been presented with, what advice do you have for de-escalating conversations to keep them productive and respectful?
Ooh, that's a hard one. It's all
Yeah.
about perspective, right?
Hmm.
It's the why do you think that? Going back to that simple question, why do you think that? Like, sometimes I have conversation with people like in our lunchrooms and teachers, whew, teachers can be different, different group of people.
Yeah.
And you have these conversations and you're like, wow, like, I really do. I lean in. I'm like, why do you think that? Like, I had a teacher who was saying, all Democrats are eating babies and drinking babies' blood,
Oh
right?
gosh. Yeah.
And they truly believe this. They truly believe this.
Hmm.
And and my goal was not to make this person feel like an idiot or
Yeah.
dumb, even though I may feel like this is just an idiotic thought because I know this person to be very intelligent,
Hmm.
very smart, but it's the common sense, right? So I start to
Yes.
question, like, I said, and I told the person, I said, I know you're intelligent, super smart, you have degrees from Harvard, these big schools. I said, why do you think that? Like, what in your mind makes you think that this could really be true? Like what things have you seen? Like, do you have
Mm.
evidence to support this? Well, I just think that, then they go on and tell me why they think that. And I just listen. I said, I just really question, all of, the common sense of what's happening in the world and putting these things out there. Like, where is the common sense to really be able to decipher? Like reality from fiction. And I think there's this
Yeah.
blurred line, right? Because so many people are on the internet, are watching movies, and they're, getting caught up in these things. And it's causing them to really create these pictures in their head that is not real, a lot of
Yeah.
times. And it's like, how do you know, help somebody understand what they're seeing? And how do you lean into that if you don't believe that, right? So
Yeah.
really, again, how do I just listen? And how do I just question and how do I help them really start to like walk back in their mind. Because when I questioned this person, I was like, why do you think that? They really had no answer. They was like, well, I saw, but why do you think that? Like, you saw somebody wrote that or somebody said this, but
Hmm.
why do you believe that? Like, why do you think that? Like, tell me, like, in your heart of hearts, why do you think that? And the person was just like, well, I don't know.
Hmm.
So then, I just kind of was like, okay, well, just I think you should think about that and maybe look at some more research into that. Really, think about that. And I'm like, I know I have plenty of friends that are working in Congress and councilmen that are
Hmm.
Democrats, and I can tell you they're not doing those things. They're doing the things that they need to do to try to make this country better. I said,
Yeah.
so you really need to get to know some. Maybe you're feeling this, but maybe you need to get to know. You need to step out, and maybe get to learn and meet some of these Democrats that you think are doing these
Hmm.
things. So it's really just it's unfortunate that people create these stories and they start to believe them, or people were putting these stories out there, and there's so much rhetoric going on. And at this time, with the elections and things like that, people really just need to be curious. They need to be, asking the real questions. They need to really be, I hate to say like fact checking, but really fact checking things. And I think that's
Yeah.
hard, right? Because who's,
Yeah.
what's real and what's not real. And I think that's the biggest issue that the internet has kind of caused. Because we growing up,
Mhm.
right? We went down to the library. We got to pull out the big thing, the big
Oh, yeah.
projector, and you're like sliding through, looking at old news articles, what people
Hmm.
have written. Now people can get information so quickly, and people can manipulate it so quickly. And then you got AI where it can actually take your voice and have you saying something that you never said, right? So
Yep.
even like this video
Yep.
you and I are doing right now, someone could take this video, change up everything we're saying, and
Hmm.
it could be a whole campaign for Trump,
Yeah.
or for
Yeah.
Kamala, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's like it just it's just really, I think, we're just living in some very dangerous times, but also some very informing times where you should be informed, where the knowledge is out there so easily readily
Yeah.
to get. And I think we really just have to again start to shift our way of
Hmm.
thinking, and lean in with curiosity and question everything.
I second that. Um, you saw some of the conversations that I had with people on social media,
Hmm.
years back in 16 and then 22 and or 20 and 22. And, um, there's something that I practiced later on. 16 was a different story. 16 was like, are you for real? Are you serious? I was wrestling with the reality that people really meant what they were saying. But as I kind of grew in wisdom and thinking, it was like, okay, how do we approach this in a way, recognizing social media for what it is? How do you do this in a way that doesn't dishonor the person that you're speaking to? Because what I've learned is that they're getting their information because someone they trusted, they care for, shared the information in the first place. So there's a trust factor already built into what they're looking at, even if it seems outrageous. And so having the time and saying, okay, do I need to engage? Eddie, do you need to engage with this post? Okay, I care about the person. I'm going to engage with that person. And then just asking them questions, not in that format, but in the off time where we can just connect and, ask them, you don't hold that standard for anything else where it's just so and so said it, so I believe it,
Mm-hmm.
especially with your children. You know, I tend to think of things as if they, regardless, are going to impact my children. So if somebody tells me that this is what's going on in the world, well, okay, thank you for the information. Let me go look at it before I share it with the rest of the world and put my name on it, my stamp on it. I take a moment to look at it and I say, that's not quite true. Or maybe there's a kernel of truth and everything else got blown out of proportion. But these things that are going around have real world impact, and that's why I'm glad you were able to join us today. I'm so glad that we're going to do this again because in a few weeks it's going to be needed to help settle down people. And but for now, Tiffany, thank you so much for being a part of the show, and I would love For people who've listened to you and want to learn more, want to follow your work, how can they do that?
Yes, they can follow me on Instagram at Tiffany Creates or at Facebook the same. And then I also have a website that I can give to you. It's www.creative. And the creative is with the 8 Tive recovery.com. So
Perfect.
www.creativerecovery.com. So that's my website where they can kind of learn more about me.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tiffany, we'll make sure all of your contact info is in the show notes. And
Yes.
thank you again. This was great.
Yes. Thank you so much, Eddie. It was really great pleasure to see you and speak with you. I love the work that you're doing. Thank you for doing
Thank you.
this.
Thank you. The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show is produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men and Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddiepaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love. At the Say Something Studios division of Elevate One Consulting, we don't just build websites, we craft unforgettable digital experiences. Imagine a place where design, development, UX, SEO, and management harmonize to elevate your brand to unprecedented exposure. A place where your website is not just seen, but felt, experienced, and remembered. Our expert team, equipped with unparalleled marketing insight, turns the everyday task of website design and management into a seamless, empowering journey. With Elevate One, you're not just launching a website, you're embarking on a transformative business adventure. We meticulously design every aspect, from intuitive navigation to stunning graphics, ensuring your digital space authentically represents your business ethos. Ready to transform your online presence into a thriving digital masterpiece? Visit us now at www.elevateoneconsulting.com and start your journey to digital excellence. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Say Something Studios.